Welcome to Momming as a Millennial, the podcast where we explore the intersection of tradition and modern parenting. Have you ever felt overwhelmed trying to balance being a mom with your professional aspirations, all while dealing with side-eye from your parents who think you're doing it wrong? Me too. I'm your host, Christine Gerizzo, a journalist, blogger, and proud mama of 2 young children. I'm so glad you're here with me. Together, we can navigate the complexities of millennial motherhood and find what resonates with our true, authentic selves. Let's dive in. Welcome to another episode of Momming as a Millennial. Today's episode is a very personal topic to me, and to be honest, it was extremely difficult for me as I was brainstorming and putting this together to face all of this head on. My very special guest and I are going to be talking about our relationships with our mothers and how maybe it was more of like a friend relationship than a parent-child relationship, and how we were raised, how that impacted us, and how now we're raising our children as a result. So I want to welcome a good friend of mine who's going to be here for me as I bare my soul, Stephany Weingartner. So thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate that. She is a fellow mom of 2 and works full-time, balancing a career and raising her children. And while she's technically not a millennial, I did look this up and she's right on the cusp. So honorary millennial mama today. So thanks. Appreciate you being here. I just think that you're going to bring a great perspective based on, what you have to say about your relationship with your mother. And I'm interested to see where this is going to go. So let's get into it.
All right.
So first off, I just want to take a moment to say that I am not by any means bashing my parents or criticizing them. I have a deep respect for both my parents. I know that they did the best that they could with what they had. I know that they love me very much. I love them. This has nothing to do with any of that. And I'm simply speaking about my personal experiences and the traumas that I have uncovered and I'm now working through as I go through my own personal growth journey as an adult. And I know this is probably going to be perceived in a negative way, no matter what I say or do. And I'm a little nervous of the fallout that might come of this. But I think it's so important to have these conversations and bring light to complicated relationships that have lasting effects on a person. And I'm doing my best to be brave and vulnerable in the hopes of maybe helping someone else who needs to hear these words or is struggling with their own situation or something similar, maybe blaming themselves and has been for years and just needs a little outside perspective. So just want to put that out there. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and dive in to this topic. You probably can't wait now with all of that prelude. So I think we can start talking about, parents who choose to be friends with their children. We both have more of a friendship relationship with our moms, I'd say, than that traditional parent-child. And I wanted to dig into that a little bit. And I'll share a little bit about my experience. And then if you could share a little bit about your experience, and then we can kind of get into the nitty-gritty. So I was always extremely close with my mom. And I have 2 older brothers. And her and I relationship just seemed, special. It was different. And we just had this closeness. And again, not to say that she didn't have like a great relationship with my brothers, because she did. She was a great mom. She had a great relationship with all of us. It's just ours was a little bit different. And I always appreciated that growing up. We did a ton of stuff together. We traveled all over. We had some great adventures. And we could talk for hours on end about pretty much anything. And actually, I love the Gilmore Girls. And when the Gilmore Girls first came out, we joked around that somebody had overheard us talking in an airport or something and then wrote a show about us. Because we were convinced Lorelai and Rory, that's our relationship. It was very similar to that if you're familiar. She helped me with everything with my wedding. She hand wrote all of my place cards for the wedding. I considered making her my matron of honor. And then someone made a comment and I was like, okay, maybe that is weird. So I buckled under that peer pressure, but that's how close we were. And things started to shift, and I'll get into that a little later. But if you could share a little bit about what was your relationship like with your mom?
Growing up, it was weird. It wasn't like we were best friends. We butted heads a lot. We fought a lot. But it was strict, but it wasn't strict. I think one of the conversations that we had recently, we were talking about the Eminem Cleaning Out My Closet album, and I had the explicit version. I think I was 9 years old or 10 years old, and I was allowed to listen to that. That was normal.
Yeah.
I was allowed to watch wrestling and South Park, and that's when South Park at the time on TV nothing was bleeped out. And
yeah.
I was allowed to watch those things, but at the same time, it was very strict. So we did fight a lot then. It wasn't until I got older that we became best friends. So now she is the first person I call. I am like your typical meme. You know, like I made a sandwich. I got to call my mom and tell her about it. Mom, I made the sandwich. I didn't have enough ham. So I had to do this. You know, that's every little thing in my life now. I call her, which it wasn't like that growing up. So it's nice to have that. But then it also creates issues sometimes when you still have that like mother-daughter fighting that happens.
I did a ton of research for this episode because I wanted to make sure that I was bringing in factual information to this topic since I have like such heightened emotions around all of this. And if you had asked me like 10 years ago, do you want to be best friends with your kids like you are with your mom? I would have been like, heck yes, like this is great. But now I don't think having a friendship with my kids would be a good idea, at least until they're adults. Like you're saying, like I think that could absolutely work. But based on the reflection that I've been doing and my experiences, like I don't think that that's the best idea to be close friends with your young children. And the research tends to agree with that thought process. Maddie Drew, she's a clinical psychologist. She says that while your child is still young, parents should avoid pursuing a friendship with them. And it's the fact that, you know, parents are responsible for safety, guidance, nurture, well-being of their child. And it's not the same responsibilities that a friendship would have. And I think a close relationship with your child is one thing, but there is a difference between having closeness and being friends, and boundaries really is the key. So the first thing we're going to talk about is this idea of parent-child role confusion. Research in developmental psychology often highlights how relationships where parents and children are friends result in this parent-child role confusion or enmeshment. And I spoke about enmeshment on the boundary episodes I did a bit ago. I know you listened to those. And I think it's very fitting for this topic as well. Enmeshment describes family relationships that lack boundaries. So roles and expectations are confused, and therefore parents can be overly and inappropriate reliant on their children for support. So these blurred boundaries between parent and child cause confusion in their relational roles. And that can cause children to have difficulty respecting authority or understanding healthy boundaries and even stifle emotional development. Can you talk about your experiences? Like, was there any parent-child confusion in your relationship with your mom growing up?
I think in my teenage years.
Okay.
For sure.
I know you have a younger brother. Like,
yeah.
Did you ever have to have a parental role
for
him? Can you describe any of that?
Yeah. My brother and I are 9 years apart. So from the time that he was born, I was helping. I was happy to, you know, with the diapers and the bottles. And when he got old enough, then, you know, a little brother's like following you around like a puppy dog. And we were 9 years apart, and I hated that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want this kid hanging around me with my friends and trying to be cool. But it became a lot of, you know, Mom, can I go over my friend's house? Well, if you bring your brother. Mom, can I go to the mall? Well, if you bring your brother. Anywhere that I wanted to go, I had to bring him. And it turned into a lot of me helping raise him. Our situations are different growing up. You had both of your parents. My mom, for the most part, was a single mom. So she did have a job where she worked overnight.
Oh, wow.
And I would have to help with my brother and get him up and ready for school and on the bus and off the bus, and depending on what job she had and what role I was going to play.
Yeah.
So
that's a lot for a child. Did you have other household responsibilities you had to take care of as well?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cutting the grass, cutting the bushes, taking out the garbage, cleaning the bathroom, doing the dishes, you name it.
Did your mom date a lot?
Yes and no.
I'm just curious, like, did she ever, I don't know, go through a breakup and like lean on you for support or did she have like her own support system, like friends?
At that time, it was my grandma.
Okay.
And I think when my grandma passed, I kind of stepped in that role. She has her sisters, but her main support was my grandma. And my grandma was also involved in my mom's decision of what discipline I was going to get. So a lot of it really wasn't my mom's own feelings or thoughts about how she was going to raise us. It was really what her mom said.
Oh, interesting.
You know? Yeah.
Huh. We are going to get to discipline. So we'll get back to that. So my mom relied on me a ton, and I'll just say my dad wasn't the easiest to get along with or to live with. And I think I provided her with a lot of emotional support and then validation, you know, that baby, you're not crazy for feeling this type of way about your situation.
Mm.
But the problem for me that I'm seeing now is that because of that role confusion, there were a lot of adult situations and burdens placed on me. I spent some time trying to figure out how to explain this. Because of my relationship with my mom and how reliant she was on me, I often felt more like her partner than like my dad was her partner. And I know she didn't intend for that to happen. And I know she didn't mean for me to like internalize our situation the way that I did. But looking back, I feel like I really didn't have a choice based on, what was happening around me and what was being shared with me. I was going through all of her struggles that she had, the issues she was going through with my dad, the worry about money, being concerned about my brother's well-being and safety and if they were making good decisions, and my dad's anger and her job situation, like all of that stuff was shared with me. I mean, you can name it. I stressed about it. Again, like, I don't think that was her intention, but having all that stuff shared with you, like, what are you supposed to do? And I'll just give an example. I was very aware of our money struggles when I was young. We always had enough to eat. So they were great about food on the table, clothes on our backs, roofs over our head. It was just like the extra stuff we didn't have. But I remember there wasn't always like seconds available for everybody at dinner. And in my child brain, somewhere along the line, I decided I'm never going to take seconds because I want to make sure that my brothers have enough. It was like a very maternal, like a very parental type of reaction. And no one ever told me to do that or like think that way. I just felt like I needed to be taking care of them. And I've always felt that way about my entire family. Like I felt responsible. And this is something that I carry through in my adult life too. And I see it with my adult relationships with my brothers. And if you were talking to my mom, she would say, you put this all on yourself. But I truly believe that it's a product of that parent-child confusion that occurred because of, how she treated our relationship and how reliant she was on me for that emotional support. And it's exhausting.
Absolutely.
To go through that. Again, I'm realizing that now as an adult, all that stress I've been putting on myself for all those years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting to live your life and then reflect back on it. Why am I doing the things I'm doing? Why am I stressing out over someone else's life decisions? I do the same thing with my brother. He's 23 years old and I'm still like, you need to do this and you need to do that. And because it's what's best for him. And I have realized I need to take a step back.
Yeah.
He's an adult. It's his life and I'm not his mom.
Yeah.
And I completely relate to you. It's hard to let that go, but it is interesting to reflect back on that and think like, why am I doing this? Why am I like this?
Right. Why have I been like, for any little thing? I'm telling you, when my brother needed a ride to work because he didn't have a car, he worked midnights and I was dropping him off and my mom would pick him up or we would like switch. And like my other brother would be like, what are you guys doing? He could take a bus, like stop helping. And I'm like, I need to help. He needs my help. But again, I was young and working 2 jobs and I had no business doing that, but I felt responsible. So yeah, you're right. Why am I doing the things that I'm doing? And I do think that there is a huge difference between being best friends with your child and then being friendly with them, because I think I'm very friendly with my kids, I'd like to think. But recent developmental research shows that children benefit most from parents who enforce boundaries as well. So you can show affection and be friendly as a situation dictates, but still having those boundaries. And this is where we're going to talk a little bit about discipline. According to family strategist and coach Shatay Thompson, I looked up how to say that. She's a licensed mental health counselor. She explains that there's a difference between being friendly and being friends. Friendly means you have a clear set of boundaries while still building a relationship, and parents have a responsibility to provide that guidance and discipline and structure in a safe environment for physical and emotional exploration. But if the lines get blurred with friendship, then it makes it difficult to raise emotionally well-adjusted adults and to have those boundaries and to have that discipline and structure. Like I said, I'm friendly with my kids, but I don't hesitate to discipline them. And while I was working on this, and I made a note because it made me laugh, I had to put my daughter in timeout. She's literally sitting a couple feet away from me screaming, "You don't love me. Why do you hate me so much?" And that sucks. And I hate that. But like, I know I have to do it.
Yeah,
I don't know.
absolutely.
If you want to talk about your discipline situation.
Yeah, completely relate to the screaming in the corner in timeout, the you don't love me. And my daughter's thing right now is storming off to her room and stomping up the stairs and slamming the door or just having a complete meltdown. You don't love me. Mommy's mean.
Yep.
Like if you only knew.
It could be so much worse.
It could be so much worse. But my discipline growing up was rough. Again, talking about, if you were to ask my mom, she'd say, oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Like, poor Stephany. Like, get like the tiny violin out. And but I was heavily disciplined until I moved out at the age of 16. But how I grew up has definitely impacted how I raise my kids and how I discipline my kids. And, I make sure to tell my kids, I love you.
Mm-hmm.
And just because we're angry or just because you're in timeout doesn't mean that we don't love you. And I make it a point to never spank. Everybody is different on that topic. For me, it really affected me. So that's something that has stuck with me throughout my whole life. So I will never hit my kids. But again, everybody's different. A lot of people are like, if I'm but just a pat on the butt or a tap on the hand, and, I won't do that.
No, I appreciate you sharing that. I am not a spanker either.
No.
And for a while, like my husband would frick my daughter, and I'm like, you got to stop that. I'm not okay with that.
No.
Name calling, I was called, maybe not me, I should say, like generally my brothers and I were called a lot of names by my father growing up, and I would never do that. So
yep.
I get what you're saying.
Same.
Like it sticks with you.
Mm-hmm. It does.
And when you say like it came from your grandmother, so was she just like using the old school method of discipline?
Oh, yeah.
Like that older generation thought process?
Yeah. One example of that is, it's funny now, but, I'm sure at the time it wasn't for my brother. He was wild, sliding down our staircase on my dry erase board, holes in the wall, breaking everything, wild. My mom didn't really know how to discipline him because nothing worked.
Mm-hmm.
And the one day he was having a temper tantrum and my grandma was like, sit on him. And my mom goes, what? I can't sit on him. So my grandma got up out of her chair and sat on my brother. And he did calm down. But, that's just an example of my mom allowing her mother to parent her children. If my mom did that, I would have a huge issue with that. But I think, too, she was a younger mother and I'm older when I had my kids.
Yeah.
So I think she looked to her mom a lot for advice or guidance. So
no, that makes sense for sure. And that's tough. That stuff, like you say, sticks with you.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, a lot of this is about what we went through, what we experienced, and then how that's impacting what we're doing with our kids and how we want it to be different. So, all right, this is going to be tough. The next thing I wanted to talk about was treating children as your confidants. So as my parents got older, their friendships outside of the house waned. I don't know how else to explain it. I know my mom had some friends from church for a while, but those relationships seemed to fizzle, or maybe she wasn't talking to them as much, or they just grew apart. So she really didn't have anyone else to talk to. I see why she started confiding in me at such a young age. There was no external support system for her. And so that kind of gets into this idea of treating your children as confidants. I think there is some cost to this, and I think I've experienced it, that kids are going to get stressed out by these negative adult personal confessions. According to a 2002 study, and I know this is a little bit dated, but researchers interviewed the adolescent daughters of divorce, and they found that the girls were more likely to experience psychological distress if their mothers made detailed disclosures to them about financial worries, employment hassles, personal problems, and then negative feelings about the ex-husbands. This is where, bear with me. Because I was my mother's confidant, like I mentioned, all of that, yes. The financial stuff, the employment stuff, the stuff with my dad, even though they're not divorced, she shared a lot of negative stuff with me about my dad. I was intimately aware of their relationship issues from a very young age. I knew way too much that was going on. I wasn't emotionally able to handle it. And I really think, again, that I was the only person that she could vent to. So I don't think she saw it as anything other than I got to get this out and, I'm going to talk to my friend here. And that's how she viewed me. Sorry. So, as a result of all of this, I had such anger towards my father for so many years. And it wasn't until recently, and I mean like the past 2 or 3 years, that I realized just how like wonderful of a man he is and like how caring and supportive that he is. I'll get through it, I swear.
You're making me cry.
I'm sorry. It's just, it pisses me off, to be honest. Okay. So, yeah, like the past 2 or 3 years, I just realized he's very generous and caring and loving and supportive of me and my husband and my family. And I recently was like looking through my yearbooks, and I used to journal a lot. So I like came across some journals that I had done in high school, and they were filled with so much like hate and anger and disgust toward my dad. The writing, it hurts my soul. And I know that that wasn't me. Like that was my mom. Like that was her hate and her anger and her frustrations coming through. But it doesn't take away the pain that I feel now looking back at how maybe I treated him or missed opportunities of a better relationship that we could have had. I mean, we're okay. Like we have a good relationship, but maybe it could have been different. I feel shame and embarrassment for like feeling that way towards him. And I deeply regret all of those feelings that I harbored toward him for like 30 years, It's not something that I can go back and fix. I'm so angry about it because I feel like it's such an unfair position that I was put in, and I genuinely feel gypped because I only got one side of a story for 30 years, and I know that there's always 2 sides to every story, but I never had the opportunity to like have those discussions. My dad's not like the chattiest guy. He doesn't like open up about things. But now, as I'm getting older, if I say anything to him about my mom, he will never say a bad word about her. He goes to bat for her, like no matter what. He always sticks up for her. I don't know, the whole thing just like totally, it breaks my heart. It's a lot. It's a lot to deal with. Yeah, okay, so you talk now.
I feel like I need a minute after that.
Like, I don't know. She didn't do anything wrong. It's such like a mind F. I don't know how to feel about it because I'm so angry, but at the same time, like I still love her,
Yeah. I think it says a lot about your dad, who he is as a person. It speaks volumes to the person that he is, that most likely knowing that she was venting to you about him, and that affected your decisions about how you felt about your father and how you probably spoke to him or the type of relationship that you had. And he never once said, that's not the story, or, and he still sticks up for her to this day.
Yeah.
That says a lot. And I'm glad that you guys have a relationship now when you have that opportunity. Some people don't.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I'm grateful because now I can reach out to him and have him come visit us, just him and, my little nuclear family. And we are building on our relationship. And like I say, it was never bad, but I can only imagine the snot-nosed teenage crap I said to him,
Yeah. I mean, he might have just been thinking teenagers are rough.
I hope that's all he was thinking. Yeah. So did your mom ever confide in you about anything? Did you ever feel like there was adult situations shared with you that maybe you shouldn't have? Or even like as an adult, did she ever share anything with you where you're like, I don't really need to know that, Mom?
There were things going on in the house growing up that no child should have to see.
Yeah.
Things going on in her relationship, physical abuse, verbal abuse, police, all different things. My life was just chaos.
Yeah.
But she wasn't growing up ever telling me, oh, I'm fighting with so-and-so when this is happening. I witnessed it.
Yeah.
Now, as an adult, she's told me the stories about what happened and, what explaining it, this is what you saw. And now she does tell me some things where I'm like, ew, I do not need to know that.
Gosh.
Love you, but that was gross. That's like a friend conversation.
Yeah, right?
TMI. But I'm happy that we have that relationship now because we didn't for a long time. So
yeah, and as an adult, you understand. Even though you don't want to hear your mom sharing those things, at least you understand those things. So how has seeing things like physical abuse and verbal abuse in your home, like how has that shaped you and your relationships with men?
I came out of the gate like foot down, don't talk to me like that.
Oh, good.
Boy, I had strong woman that don't need no man attitude. And I carried that around with me because, I wasn't ever going to be treated like that. And I was in an abusive relationship myself. And I think a lot of times when you grow up in a home where there is physical abuse, you are more likely to end up in a relationship like that.
Yeah.
So that was before my husband now.
Yeah.
I was in that type of relationship. So after that, I was like, never again. No man is ever going to put his hands on me. No man is ever going to talk to me like that. I'm not going to let anyone talk to me like that. And that created some problems in our friend group when I first came around because they all had normal lives and normal parents. And, they didn't understand why this woman coming in had this attitude and, but the verbal abuse and the physical abuse in the house and myself, being spanked growing up has definitely affected how I want things to go in my household. My husband had a normal life. His parents are still together. They've been married for almost 40 years, 39 years, and they love each other, genuinely love each other. It is the weirdest thing because I always thought, if you're married that long, like you hate your husband, you hate your spouse, they love each other. So I think him growing up in more of a normal setting and having two parents that love each other and everything is gravy in the house, it's hard to see why he'll say something and I'm like, don't say that. Don't, because that later on might, mess our kids up.
Yeah.
That you don't think about that,
Yeah, totally.
Something so small is going to stick with them.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. And it's funny because my husband's parents love each other. And you're right. It's weird because my parents, they're roommates at this point, and like they did not get along growing up. So from the outside looking in, it may have looked like I had a normal childhood, but it was a little chaotic.
Yeah.
On a related note, there is this concept called parentification, and it's when a child is made to take on adult-like emotional or caregiving responsibilities for the parent. And I mean, you mentioned this with your brother. It happens often when parents treat their children as peers or confidants. But the research shows that this emotional parentification can lead to anxiety, depression, emotional dysregulation, and children, as they take on these responsibilities, they're not developmentally prepared for. And then the second part of this is that children may feel pressure to meet their parents' emotional needs rather than focusing on their own growth. So I will say, when I read that last bit, literally the bells started going off and I was like, ding, 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 ding. I have never felt more seen because I have always put my mom's thoughts and feelings before mine, prioritized her needs before mine. And again, like looking back, going like, why have I been doing that all these years? As of late, we've gotten in arguments over this, and she told me that I put all this pressure on myself and that, this is all in my head and I like fabricated it. And I always thought, obviously, that's not true, but I just couldn't put my finger on like why. And then reading that these relationships could lead to putting their parents' emotional needs before their own, it's gratifying almost that now I'm like, okay, that's why I've been doing that all these years. I think finally when I started to like work on myself and unpack all this, especially like her lack of appreciation for all that I've done for her all these years, it just dawned on me, like, I don't have to do it anymore. I don't have to please her anymore. We could have a relationship, things could be great, but like I am always going to prioritize myself and my family.
Good for you. You have to fill up your cup first before you worry about other people.
This might be a good time just to talk about like what happened to our relationship, because obviously like it was really great for a while, but things changed after I got married and had kids. And I really believe that it was because she didn't have outside supports or friends to lean on. And as I was creating this family, obviously my time got sucked up. I was, focused on being a mom for the first time, like being married, having a house, putting my family unit above everything else. And I won't say that I was pulling away from her because I just don't think that's the case. It's just that I had these other priorities competing for my attention. And while things were shifting drastically and quickly for me, nothing was changing on her end. So I can completely see how she feels maybe neglected or rejected even by me. There's only so many hours in the day, like I can't be with her as much anymore. And we used to be together all the time. And over time, I think these feelings of rejection from her end have kind of like manifested in the way that she treats me. And I would say on occasion, not all the time, but she will like lash out and say mean things or like do something that hurts my feelings. And again, I'm sitting here going like, am I crazy? Like, why all of a sudden is she being so mean to me? And I think that, it just really explains it. She truly feels rejected because we cannot physically have that relationship. Like that relationship we had is not possible anymore because of all of this other stuff I have going on. And I'm trying to work through it. And I think once I had my son, that's really when I started reflecting, like, what kind of mom do I want to be? What kind of person am I? And that's where this whole like journey began. So that was happening at the same time that I was getting busy and our relationship was kind of divergent. So I think it's just like a perfect storm of crap that I'm like dealing with and going through. And if we weren't so close leading up to that, like, would we have these same issues? Would she feel neglected and rejected? I don't know.
Right.
I wonder.
Do you think now when she says stuff, are you able to just like, let it roll off your shoulders, whereas before it probably would have really hurt your feelings? And
yeah, I mean, I'm definitely working on getting the tools and the tips and tricks to help myself not internalize all of that. And
yeah,
because I know it's not personal. So yeah, I think I'm getting better at, setting boundaries and just letting it roll. And my hope is we can get to a point where we can still build on our relationship and get back to a better place in a different way. So it's never going to be like it was, but I would just love for her to be able to recognize that we can still have a good relationship and move forward. And these little snipey comments and things when she's upset don't need to happen. Like she can verbalize, I felt left out, but that is going to take, I think, work.
My mom does similar things.
Oh, does she?
Yes. Yeah. Not so personal, but the like, I'll be like, good morning. And then it's like, I'm like, oh. But I have learned with her, she's usually upset about something. Something is upsetting her. And, you just give her a minute and then she kind of like works through it. But that took time.
Yeah.
For both of us really to learn. Because before I would, go right back. Why are you talking to me like that? Yeah. And then it would spiral. And then it turned into now she's mad at me instead of, now I just let it go. I think it is funny when you have kids because you think, oh, am I going to raise my kids that same way? If my kid does that, am I going to, and you're looking at their adorable little baby face and like, when you do this, what am I going to do? And it does make you kind of think a little bit more.
Yeah. I do the same thing now, though. I just kind of let it ride because I would before go at her. And there are times when I get frustrated and I do engage. And I think maybe she's looking for that, you know? And so I try to not engage as much as possible because then I am less hurt by that situation.
Mm-hmm. And like you said, it's probably not anything personal.
Yeah. And that's how I try to view it. Like it's something that I know is bothering her that I wish that she could talk to me about, that we could work through. But I know like I didn't do anything wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Like to me, this was inevitable that I was going to get married and have kids. I hope that we can continue to like nurture our relationship and get closer again. That'd be great. So do you think you'll be friends with your kids?
Not when they're little.
Yeah.
Definitely not. I mean, I'm friendly.
Yeah.
We have our movie nights and with popcorn and we do fun things. But when my daughter's a teenager, she needs to have her own friends. Mm-hmm. And first and foremost, I am mom.
Yeah.
And then, we can have a friendly relationship where we do things together. But I really don't know if I would even have a best friend relationship with my kids when they're adults.
Yeah.
The dynamic is just so different from how I grew up with my mom, with how I am with my kids. So I don't know. I don't know how that would happen. But as far as them being kids and being friends with them, no.
No, I agree with that. And that brings me to my final thought for this episode. Obviously, there's positives and negatives to everything, and not every child reacts the same to each kind of approach or style. So like that being said, for me, I agree with you. I don't think I would be friends with my kids at least until they're adults. And my hope really is that I just create such a loving, safe space for them that they're going to want to share their lives with me, especially when they get older. Like they'll want to share things with me. And as they're younger, I think, I'm not going to share my personal adult problems. I won't even talk about issues, or not necessarily fighting, but just like work problems or other issues, or like if we need money for this or any sort of like adult situation. Like I don't even talk to my husband about that in front of the kids anymore, because I noticed like their ears perking up and my son will start asking questions. So that I want to always keep separate. Even I think when they're adults, I don't think I would ever share any sort of like what goes on between me and my husband or marital situations with my kids. I just don't think that there's ever a place for that personally. And again, I'm speaking from my own experiences. But I do think it's okay to like model, you know, sharing thoughts and feelings of maybe being upset about something or disappointed or failing at something. Like I think that's okay to show them, and then maybe give them a little guidance on how they would persevere in those types of situations. But that's like the extent of it as far as
I think we're so similar to how we raise our kids and how we parent and discipline and how we have fun with our kids. We are so similar in how we raise our kids. So I think like everything you're saying, I'm trying not to interrupt you by going, yes, exactly, right. Same.
But it's funny too. So looking at, we had different upbringings and like here we are. And I agree, like we parent similar. Anything else you want to share?
No, I think that's all I got.
Yeah, I'm emotionally drained. So I'm going to go ahead and end the episode. So as always, be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. And thank you for sharing this very heavy and emotional episode with us. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in to Momming as a Millennial. If you enjoyed the episode, please share it with a friend or on social. You can find more from me at contemplativemama.com. Until next time.